we had a wonderful conversation with our friends at Situ, and they work in the co-working and open plan flex market. And they were saying about, you know, open plan isn't dead, and people are worried that open plan is going to be the thing that everybody doesn't want to go back to. But actually, in terms of a virus position, you can see people coming from a long way off, so you can keep your distance. You don't have to be sort of checking into meeting rooms or touching handles to go into a meeting room. They're looking at collaboration settings such as booth type furniture, and now knowing that information that he's just shared about Primera, that's quite interesting about the textiles that we could start applying to those products so that they are easily wipeable, then they're low risk for contamination. But people do want to be in the office to see people. And I know that actually next Tuesday, I'm going into a client office. I know that about 10 to 20 people that I work with are going to be in on Tuesday. So, you know, great for that client, because they're going to have an uplift of all of the real estate function going back in, and it's going to be wonderful. But they also are in a relatively new build, and they've got all this wonderful activity-based settings that you can go and have a meeting and not have to be in a room. Because I have to say, I don't want to sit in a room with 3 other people that's, you know, a huge room. I don't want to be confined with air. Like for me personally, that's not what I want to do. So, you know, my points personally from our business would be that people should be investing in those open plan settings, clever materials, big enough, almost like those wonderful booths that we have, those high back furniture booths that are able to seat people at a distance, but you could have, you know, 2 to 3 people at those 2 meter, 1 meter distances. But I remember speaking to Ben about this, and Ben, when we first discussed about doing this knowledge share or getting involved with your team, we thought that there would be a difference in what people are ordering because of that. So weren't expecting, that was sort of my leading question earlier as to this big order you had overseas, was we would personally be thinking in the UK that the investment would be for these activity settings rather than desks and task chairs, because people would want to be changing up their workplace, making it flexible, knowing that people are going to be remote working, so their occupancy levels are going to be lower than they ever have been before. So encouraging that sort of community aspect. So I was really surprised that in region your orders are staying the same, but with this booth type position. And I'm just wondering, maybe from Kelvin and Jacqui's perspective, are you seeing that type of change? Do you agree with those comments, or is there another tactic that you're taking that we should all be aware of?
I think, sorry, if I can chip in, Jackie's absolutely right. You know, that my understanding, certainly what I've read, is that fabric and PET felt is far more safer than hard surfaces, because the virus gets trapped into the fibres of that material. Whereas if there's a hard surface such as melamine or whiteboard, that type of thing, it sticks, or perspex, it just stays on the outside and is easily transferable. It's all about the transferability of that virus. Another point you made earlier, Jacqui, was about it appears that the virus is far more airborne than we originally thought. So the important thing is that for most offices, that they, in this time of the year when the weather's good, is you keep the windows open where you can to get air movement through the building and shift the virus from, you know, out the door, as it were. But I think, you know, going back to your point though, Victoria, is that, you know, I'm seeing a lot of my colleagues and I are seeing a lot of tenders coming through, and there doesn't seem to be much shift from what people specified 6-12 months ago. So I'm not entirely sure that people are actually too concerned about. They're almost saying it's going to go away, so I'm not going to buy anything that I have to change in 6-12 months time if and when there's a virus or whatever, you know, an act of God or whatever. Wow. So I don't know, usually, Ben, all the tenders I've seen in recent weeks, it's pretty much the same.
So I agree, but I think it's the volume of tenders. So I think we've still got the capital projects, the major flagship projects, the ones that have to happen are still going ahead. But I think at the moment, we were saying other people have held off making decisions where they have the ability not to necessarily, when they're not forced to make that decision. I think they're still waiting. But definitely.
And that's part of the reason why people aren't going back to the offices, because I think employers don't know what to do in terms of how it's safe. And I think that the perspex screen thing, not what I mentioned, the perspex screen, but it was almost a false sense of security. I'm doing something, because I've seen them in Marks and Spencer's or at my local petrol station or whatever, or your chiropractor in your case, Victoria.
I think that's the value of this knowledge share as well, isn't it, right? So it's about engaging, it's about businesses and occupiers engaging with the likes of us to actually make better decisions towards how they gear themselves up for people returning to the office.
One of the interesting things is that I think that a lot of us have become very comfortable working from home. And you know, one of our customers has stated that they're surprised at how well people have adapted to not working in the workplace. And people who have worked from home a lot, like Jacqui, like Kelvin, like you guys, like myself, where we're comfortable doing that, we kind of know the rules. We know that when you work from home, you work as hard as you do, if not harder, than when you're in the office. You may work from 8 in the morning to 6, 7 at night, and then you sit there with your phone doing more emails. Continue. You don't actually switch off as easily. You may not work the whole time, but the period of focus and concentration generally can make you more productive in getting the tasks that you need to do in isolation done. The problem is at the moment that we're all forced to work from home, and we're doing the tasks that we would normally do in a collaborative environment at home as well. So for example, when we're having team meetings, we're doing it by Zoom, and Zoom only allows one of us to talk at the same time. And I'm looking at your faces, but I can't see all of you at the same time. So you guys find it hard to interrupt me if you want me to shut up or you want to make your point, and it lengthens the time. So whilst people are working harder or as hard as they were, the question is really about whether productivity is as high. And I'm not sure that the country has realized that productivity is dropping dramatically because we're not as effective. We're comfortable, we're happy, we're enjoying it, we're working hard, but we're not as productive, I don't think. One example or illustration. Yesterday I was in our showroom. And I was in there for a couple of minor meetings, you know, and networking sessions. And I went next door to our neighbours who happened to be a furniture dealership. And I popped over, and as I stood over, I went to say hello and, you know, just, remind them that we were present. They had a big spreadsheet out with a load of furniture on it. And I said, oh, what's that? And they said, we're doing a tender. I said, well, a lot of that could be ours. They said, oh, I said, no, seriously, look, that's Sedus, that's Sedus, that's Sedus. They said, oh, do you want to have a go at it? I said, I'd love to. You don't get that on Zoom.
No.
True.
No.
I think it depends what industry you're in. So just by way of an example, Bill was talking to an insurance company and he said, it's very quiet. You're working from home. And she said, oh yeah, thank God, instead of being in the call centre, which is noisy, I can't concentrate. Now, if you think about it, you know, innovation happens when people get together. When you start doing individual tasks, I think, like that lady, she said, I don't want to go back to the workplace. I want to work from home because she is more productive, because she can get more calls done. So it really depends on the industry, the job, the role.
The activity as well.
Exactly, the activity. So, you know, all of these things are what we do. They all go into the melting pot, don't they, when we're taking a brief, because everybody's different, every activity's different, every role's different. So I think we've just got to understand that which industry is more productive or can be more productive by working from home. And the whole workday has shifted. But what we know is that those people do want flexibility. They're remote working now. They're not agile working, because that's the mistake that a lot of people are making. They're saying all our teams are agile now. They're not. They're remote. But we know that we've got to do things differently for those people. How do they work? So again, it's that role. You know, how are they interrupted? How can they do things differently? And how can we support them? And it's not just about furniture.